And I don't care. Which is just.
Something told
But you may have the other two that want
Did you? Yep.
Okay. We're going to do a ceremonial swearing in of all the new electorates. So if you could go over by the flag there, that would be appreciated.
Yep, I'm gonna Gonna do it in unison, okay? If you could raise your right hand,
Your other right.
having been appointed to the office of,
Having been appointed to the office of District Two trustee
in the village of Germantown, Washington County,
in the village of Germantown, Washington County,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
the Constitution of the state of Wisconsin,
the code of ordinance of the village of Germantown,
the code of ordinances of the village of Germantown,
faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office to my best ability,
of said office to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. All right, with that then, I'd like to call this meeting to order. It's a regular meeting of the Village Board on Monday, April 17th at 7 p.m. here at the Germantown Village Hall Boardroom and also can be accessed via WebEx. This meeting has been given public notice in accordance with sections 19.83 and 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes in such form that will apprise the general public and news media of subject matter that is intended for consideration and action. Roll call shows all village board members present except for trustee Pieper, who I'm going to assume is in transit and may be joining us shortly. She's not in transit. Okay, then she is excused. At this time, I'll ask us all to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is President's Report. I have nothing to report tonight, so we'll go right to the appointments and the recommendations from the village president for each of the people for the different committees and commissions.
Motion to approve Roman numeral number 5, 1 to 14.
Motion made. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, but need clarification.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Clarification or discussion?
Is it A and B?
A and B, 1 to 14.
And that is all right with the second?
Yes.
Okay, any further discussion? Trustee Miller.
Good evening. I just want clarification. I was reading through some Muni codes and one of the Muni codes is 2.209 standing committees. And the composition of standing committees, it says, except that the trustee serving as the trustee representative to the planning commission shall not receive an appointment to a standing committee or any other board or commission unless such trustee shall request or consent to additional appointment. And I was referring to trustee Baum.
I was called last week, asked if I'd be on the committee, and I agreed to do it.
Okay, then you've given consent.
Yes.
And I have another, I have a correction under number 3, under B3. That would be Board of Zoning Appeals. It's Christine Huber, Kristine. She's been on the board before. And then my other question is, the Economic Development Committee, in the Muni Code 1.379, it does state that there would be 7 people on the committee. So I'm wondering, where are the other people?
They're yet to be found or are coming forward, but they can be recommended at other meetings to fill those positions.
Oh, I've had residents come to me and I've been giving them this form to fill out.
Mhm.
And I don't understand where it goes because they never get a response.
Okay, well, I don't have it in my possession, so either it's within the village clerk, or it's been lost in some of the changes that have occurred recently at Village Hall. It would be my only explanation, but I don't have it.
You have no other requests to be on committees?
I
by
have
residents?
other open requests that I received today. I received one today, this morning, for Ethics Board, but I have no others that I know of. And even if they're submitted at the discretion of the village president or the chair of that particular committee, they may or may not be appointed.
So I guess a protocol or a process might be recommended for filling out these Village of Germantown information profile for public service appointment consideration. It comes into the clerk perhaps, and then it should go to you, and then you review it. But I think the residents or the resident that completes this should get a response.
If I have it in my possession, in most cases, I will respond to them and either call them up or email them and see what their desire is to be on that committee, background, and other items of that sort, which I've done in the past.
Okay, then what meeting would it be that people can resubmit their request?
They can resubmit it anytime, and it can be brought forward in any future village board meeting as a recommendation to an open position within the committee or commissions that are there.
Okay, that's great. Great news.
Trustee Rick Miller?
Yeah, just a clarification. This is not all the positions in every committee. These are just the ones that are renewed this year, correct? Or
Correct, the ones-
staggered terms.
Or changed, correct?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Right, some of them are still serving out their terms for those that have longer terms. These are just those that have to be either renewed or I have a position available or someone that's available for that position. But I know there are some open positions in ethics, and I think Board of Zoning Appeals, Board of Review, those types of positions are available and open. As you said, the Economic Development Commission has openings. Also, Utility Advisory has openings as well.
So is this a complete list of everybody or just the appointments as trustee Rick Miller was saying?
It's a complete list of the appointments to date that I've received or approved. Yes. To recommend, actually, not approved. You do the approving, but I've recommended.
Mhm. And so there could be openings.
There are openings.
All right. We'll bring that forward. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Further discussion? Trustee Myers?
Under number 12, if they could correct my last name, I appreciate that.
We always struggle with that one, don't we?
I don't know.
Apologize, Trustee Myers.
It's once a month. I get,
Further discussion?
that's another. It's
No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. That then takes us to announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee and department reports. We'll start with committee reports and committee chairs with Trustee Kaminsky.
Public Works will meet in this room at 5:30 PM on Wednesday, May 3rd.
Okay. Trustee Rick Miller.
General Government and Finance will meet on Monday, May 15th at 6 PM.
Okay, thank you. And the recent change would be for trustee Hudson for public safety, but perhaps trustee Myers, spelled Myers, can have the date of when the next meeting is.
Mr. President, that would be May 1st in this building at 6 PM, unless it gets changed.
Okay, thank you for that information. Does anyone else have anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? There is nothing else. We can then go on to the next item. I'm sorry,
President,
trustee Jan Miller.
I moved my sheet, but I would like to make a couple of announcements for the Germantown Community Library. First, we have a fundraiser. If you like Chick-fil-A, tomorrow night's the night. If you show up, go to the website and click on the April newsletter. There's a coupon. And if you hand it to the clerk when you place the order, the library will receive 20% off the purchase. And it's our fundraiser. It's tomorrow, Tuesday, the 18th, from 4 to 8. And in addition to that, something new at the Germantown Community Library, they launched 2 digital resources free for residents. It's called Universal Class. It offers over 600 online courses for professional and personal development, and Transparent Language offers a database for learning over 110 languages, and that's all free at the library. And information for our next board meeting is the next Germantown Community Library Board meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 26th at 6 PM at the library community meeting hall.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for announcements of forthcoming events of public interest, committee or department reports? All right, then we can go on to citizen input and public appearance on items not subject to a public hearing. There are no public hearings on tonight's agenda, but if there's anyone within our audience or joining us via WebEx that would like to participate in citizen input or public appearance, all I would ask is if you are in our audience to come up to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And if you are within the WebEx participation, please let the web host know that you would like to participate in citizen input or public appearance. Is there anyone at this time that would wish to come forward for citizen input or public appearance?
Melanie Smythe, N140W17938 Cedar Lane. What I'm handing out is a summary worksheet that came from, or actually I put it together based on reading an article from the MacGyver Institute regarding TIDS. If you want to look at the actual article, the whatchamacallit pathway is at the top. The author, Bill Osmulski, has been doing a series on TIDS. And basically he's saying that as a result of this memo that came out of the legislature last year, November 29th, 2022, from attorney Scott Grosk, sent to Senator Dewey Strobel, it basically shows how TIDS do in fact raise taxes. And I just thought this would be very good information going into, we're not that far off getting into the budget cycle. And as you are well aware from my prior comments, I am not for TIDS. I think we have plenty of them. And I think that part of the issue that we have with not being able to fund some of our needs for public safety is as a result of the TIDS that are in place, which are still diverting taxes away from the general fund. So I made a copy of this memo. I only made one, so I'll just leave it with you, President Walters. Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Some extra sheet.
Do one extra one down here too. Oops.
I'm not sure if she's done yet, Steve. Oh, okay. Anyone else wishing to come forward for citizen or public appearance is welcome to do so.
Stephen Wezolowski, that's Wesolowski. I live at West 169, North 10427 Pheasant Run in the Old Farm subdivision. And tonight I just wanted to thank the village board members and the various committees and the village staff also for being patient, understanding, and acknowledging the facts, data, cost comparisons that I've provided to demonstrate how last spring's change in the sewer formula credit impacted the residential water and sewer customers in an adverse way. As you have seen, I can be pretty persistent as an individual who builds my case on the analysis of facts. I bring objective information to you, and I try not to bring subjective matter or opinion to you as little as possible. Tonight, I believe that our community is going to watch our village board modify the summer sewer credit formula back to its original format of Q4 and Q1 and restore the Q2 credit. The village staff has indicated the formula change can be made in time for the June water sewer bills, but they're not sure if we can do a test to verify that this change that we're going to implement in the formula is going to work. So they'd like to try to get a test in. At our last utility advisory board meeting, our administrator, Steve, thought somehow, some way he could make that happen for us, and he's willing to cooperate with us. And I was very glad to hear that. I believe that we need to get this right for the citizens and people of Germantown. Trustee Hudson, and I like you, sir, expressed a concern at the Public Works Committee meeting about getting this test in the system. I'm almost done. I thought about his concern, and I have a solution. If you remember last fall, with all the issues going on with these water bills and that, then we lost data. We actually postponed the Q3 water bill for, I believe, almost 4 weeks before we mailed those out. So I got thinking, if we can get a test done within 1-2 weeks later than the normal billing out of the Q2, we could hold off on mailing out those bills. I think this would go a long way in restoring the confidence that our citizens have in our trustees. And it would show that that the trustees can work together as a team and make changes for a better Germantown. And finally, as a utility advisory committee member, I look forward to working with the consultant that eventually will do a rate study for us, and we're going to try to make things more fair, equal, and work on those things. So I just thank you for letting me be part of your team.
Well, thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
My name is Tom Noss. I live at West 179 North 11435 Blackstone Circle. So I live in the Blackstone community. And I would concur with the last speaker that, first of all, to thank you. I did receive a credit for the Q3 last year. And I appreciate that because our bill almost doubled from what it was before the year previous. But I'd also agree too that we need the Q2 and the Q3 adjusted each year, because like this last week was very warm outside. I washed both cars in my driveway, and that water didn't go into the Metro Milwaukee sewage district. It went down the drain in our storm drains. So there's a lot of water that's being used in the summer that residents use. That's not going into the sewers. So with that, that's what I had to say.
All right, thank you for coming forward. Is there anyone else that wishes to come forward at this time for citizen input or public appearance?
Scott Heffley, W159N10514 Old Farm Road, Germantown. Couple quick comments. I won't use the all for 3 minutes. First of all, I guess the audit presentation is going on tonight. The 21 audit, I'm sure everybody's interested to see what that's about. I'm more interested in the 22 audit to see our the two-year trend analysis of how we're doing and how we're doing it. So the 22 audit means more for me than the 21 does, but the 21, obviously, we're a year late on that. So I hope we can get that done, quickly before, we need it done before the budget process for sure. We have to have accurate numbers for you to make decisions on. Channel 25 update, I'm very interested in that. I have clients up in what you call the green zone that aren't technologically proficient, and they don't do WebEx, they don't have computers, and they've been looking for channel 25 to be on for close to 2 years. And if they tell me it's close to 2 years, I'm not going to argue with them. So we need to fix that, whatever it takes, get them on there so they can watch, because they do have an interest with what's going on in the village. Summer sewer credit, I can't say I agree with Mr. Wesolowski. The committee appointments were unclear from the standpoint of, I thought I was off utility advisory, and so did Mr. Wesolowski, thought we were off the commission because it wasn't clear that you were just adding new people. We thought we were, we didn't know. I'm on the commission. I don't even know that I wasn't supposed to be renewed or whatever it was. So a full list of who's on the commission, if I'm on there, I'd like to know that, is what I'm saying, I guess. It's not on the agenda or anything, or the background information, so hope I'm still on there. I mean, we'll find out. As far as bumping the non-represented employee salaries for police, as everyone knows, I'm a big fan of police, and I would say that whether in the room or not. We need to bring things up to scale. I don't want to lose the few officers we have to other communities in our county. That's ridiculous. So I hope you decide to use some sort of fund and reserves that you have to help them out, because we need them here desperately. As a matter of fact, we need more officers. So let's not lose the ones that we have, please. And then one question, I don't know if it can be answered, but President Walter, I gave you something you read in the last time. I think there was 7 or 8 points on the budget, and I had you read them into the minutes. Does that mean they don't go in these minutes? Or what minutes do they go into? I just have, what question?
Madam Clerk?
I don't know the answer, I guess.
They would be in these ones. They're not?
They're not in there. There was 8 or 9 points that Mr. Walter read in specifically related to the budget, and they're not anywhere in here. I could re-provide them if that's important. Thank you.
Thank you. And just so you know, the term that you and Mr. Wesolowski had agreed to is a 3-year term. So you won't be on the list neither next year either, because you're serving a 3-year term as part of utility advisory.
I didn't know that based on this. I would think that I wouldn't know. So.
Okay, well, that's information now that I'm saying to you. When we brought you forward in your name, it was listed as a 3-year term, but just so you know that until your term is up, it won't be listed as an opening, or if you wish to remain on the committee, that's also appreciated. All right, is there anyone else that wishes to come forward for citizen input or public appearance, or is there anyone joining us via WebEx that would like to do so as well? I'm going to say no, but I do have one communication that I received today, and it states, "Today I wish to express my support of the Public Works Committee recommendation to rescind the water rate changes that resulted in unjustified charges for the third quarter of the 2022 water billing. During the April 5th Public Works Committee meeting, it became clear that the past attempts at revision of the water utility billing had no basis in fact or analysis. It has also become clear that there was no articulated rationale for making those changes, nor were those changes justified by credible rate analysis. This one piece of information that the village can count on. The one piece of information the village can count on is the amount of water consumed by every user. The piece of information that the village has no knowledge of is the sewage produced by every user. That is the underlying question. Provision of water and the cost of providing that water are metrics that are easily available to the village utility. If the provision cost is not sufficiently covered, rate changes should be easily calculated and equitably assessed for the consumption of water. The crux of the purported problem seems to be the cost of sewage treatment and the equitable assessment of that cost. For a residential user, if the water is consistent for 3/4 and jumps in the 4th quarter, it is most probable that increased usage is due to irrigation, swimming pools, and car washing, none of which finds its way into the sewage treatment. For commercial users such as Walmart or distribution center and car wash, it is probable that all water is finding its way into the sewage system regardless of seasonality. For those businesses, a sewage rate based on a percentage of consumption might be the best metric to determine sewage production. I submit that for residential users, the largest increase is non-sewage use is lawn irrigation. The prime question to be answered by any proposed rate study is how the water utility accurately determines sewage usage by user. This was highlighted by Trustee Miller in the April 5th meeting when he stated that the village gets a single sewage treatment charge from MMSD, and then the village must determine how to allocate that cost. Perhaps there needs to be classifications of water users that better identify the percentage of use and the timing of that use. Those are some of the questions that need to be addressed. My fear is that with all these requirements identified prior to the purchase and implementation of the new billing system, the village may not have selected a system that addresses the results of the proposed study. The ability of the new system to support multiple classes of users and flexible rate changes by user class was brought into question by the Public Works Committee. Requirements gathering should always precede any action. On a final note, the new billing statement shows a graphical representation of water consumption by quarter. The graphs are empty for the 3 years prior. Population of those 3 years should have been a task completed by the software provider and should have been included in the implementation plan. Since sewage charges seem to make up the bulk of the utility charge, it should be useful to show estimated sewer flowage by quarter, and that communication was submitted by Frederick Schmelzer, who is the president of the Glen at Blackstone Creek. If there is no one else that wishes to come forward for a citizen input or public appearance, we can go on to the next item on the agenda, which would be consent agenda.
Motion to approve Roman numeral number 8 as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve consent agenda items A through H. Any discussion on that motion to approve? Trustee Jan Miller.
Yes, it does include the minutes. Am I correct?
Yes, it's item A.
Okay, why don't we go ahead and correct Scott Heffley's last name, and the correct spelling is Heffle, not Hefty or F-L-Y. We've got it
Apologize for
3
that,
different
Scott.
ways.
Between
But-
you and Dennis, we just can't seem to get those 2 names right.
But I was told by Mr. Heffley that he prefers the Heffle spelling.
Over the hefty, so would I.
Okay,
All right, do you want to pull the minutes and have a separate vote on that, or is that just your recommendation for an amendment to the motion to approve?
I think you have to pull the minutes.
Okay, that would be
to
fine.
Make the correction, please.
Then is there any other discussion on the approval of the consent agenda items now B through H?
The Robert Milky, which letter is that? E. Item E,
Rupert Melky, yes?
what is the actual project cost?
We can pull that if you'd like and discuss it at that time as separate from the rest of the consent agenda.
Please pull
Okay,
item
so-
number E.
Right now, we have items
A
A and
and
E
E.
pulled. So we're now looking for consent agenda approval on items B through D and F through H. Is there any other discussion on the motion to approve those items of the consent agenda? No other discussion? We'll have a roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers,
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller, Trustee Baum,
Aye.
Trustee Hudson.
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky, and Trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Nyrather,
Aye.
and President Walter.
Aye. That then takes us to consent agenda item A. And the request, I believe, for the approval of minutes is the change or revision of Scott Heffley's spelling of his last name and also the addition of his items that were read in as part of public comment.
Yes, please.
Any other discussion on that? Or would you like to make a motion to approve with those changes?
I'd like to make a motion to approve with those changes, please.
Okay. We have a second.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve minutes as revised? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to consent agenda item E, Rupert Melke, contract for engineering services related to the sanitary sewer facilities plan update. Trustee Jan Miller.
Larry, could you confirm, I thought, and I apologize, I thought that the cost, when it was brought forward originally, was about $53,000. Is that right? Has this
No,
changed?
nope, this is the same proposal that was brought to the Public Works Committee. $62,400 is their estimate on a time and materials basis.
Okay, and when will that occur, that work?
If it's passed tonight, I will notify them tomorrow morning. Actually, the work has started already. They've already started processing some of their data.
All right. Thank you for clarifying that.
Any other questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
No.
Okay, then a motion would be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve item E.
Consent agenda item E, motion to approve. Do I have a second? Motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion to approve the Rupert Melke contract for engineering services related to sanitary sewer facility plan update? There is no discussion. We'll do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Jan Miller,
No.
Trustee Baum,
Aye.
Trustee Hudson,
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky, Trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Myers,
Aye.
Trustee Nyrather,
Aye.
President Walter.
Aye. Motion passes. That takes care of all items listed on tonight's agenda under consent agenda. So that then would take us to our new business items, starting with new business items A, the 2021 audit report presentation. To give us some more background and information on that item. Sure. Mr., is it going to be you or Matt Usselini?
I'm just gonna, if you don't mind, I'll just introduce some folks. We do have a staff from Baker Tilly who are going to be here making the presentation.
Okay.
I also just real briefly wanted to recognize Alex Clairbeau, who is in the back here. Alex joined the Village of Germantown about 8 months ago as a house. And he's been doing just a really great job for us. He has a master's degree in accounting from Northern Michigan, and we're very lucky to have him here. And when you hear the discussion that's going on, a lot of it's the work that he's been doing, cooperation with the Baker Tilly staff. And we have here from Baker Tilly, Amanda Blomberg, who's going to be leading the presentation. And also on WebEx, we have Leah Gaffney from Baker Tilly. So thank you for coming tonight.
Oh, sure.
Or I can do it either.
No, that's fine. All right. Is this on? Okay. All right. Well, thanks for having me tonight. Again, my name is Amanda Blomberg. I'm a director with Baker Tilly. We have worked on the village's financial audit on an annual basis. And as mentioned, we are presenting the 2021 financial highlights for you. As I'm sure you have been made aware of some of the challenges the village faced, and that's why we're talking about 21. Obviously, 22 has occurred as well, and so that is next on the list. What I'm going to be going over today are some financial highlights, talk a little bit about the information that you would be looking at in the financial statements, which is a pretty lengthy and complex document. So we try to kind of boil that down into a few useful benchmarks for you to take a look at and provide some just overall analysis of what those what those numbers mean and what you need to key in on. All right. Leah is on the phone today. She is the manager and makes everything happen with the audit. So we really appreciate her efforts too. Either one of us are available for questions at any time. Okay, we're going to start with the general fund, first of all. So I know some of you have probably heard some or all of this presentation before, but feel free to jump in and ask questions as we move along here. The general fund is a major area of focus for the outside world. It's where the majority of the tax levy goes. It funds much of the operations in the village, whether that's your public works or police departments, recreation, and so forth. So we do take a look at the general fund to get a pretty good idea as to what the financial health of the village would be. What you see on this slide here is the graph on the left breaks down the general fund into a few different categories, and you'll see those explanations on the lower right-hand side. Basically, fund balance is divided into categories based on the liquidity of certain assets that feed into that fund balance. So fund balance is like your equity or reserves on hand. It's your assets minus your liabilities for that particular fund. Down at the very bottom of that graph, you'll see the non-spendable category. That is the least liquid. Basically, that money has been already spent or is unavailable to be spent in the near term. If we move up in the categories of fund balance, you'll see that there are no amounts in the restricted or the committed, but that we do have assigned and unassigned, and those are the more liquid categories of fund balance. So assigned fund balance is really reserves that have been earmarked for specific purposes, and that is under the village board control. So the amounts that you'll see here are let's see here. We are about $1 million compared to about $676,000 from last year. So that amount has gone up a little bit. And that represents some budget carryovers and some usage of fund balance in the 22 budget. The unassigned category is the most liquid, meaning that it's available. It hasn't been earmarked for any purposes. It's available to be spent on essentially current bills that were in existence at the end of 21. That total has dropped a little bit from last year, about 7.4 million compared to 8 million. And that is just a result of the other categories essentially going up. So if we look at your summarized income statement at the top right-hand side, you'll see that the village was really close in generating the same amount of revenues as expenditures for the year. In fact, there was about a $56,000 increase in the fund balance total. So when we think about fund balance total going up and we increased a couple of other categories, that unassigned categories then going to decrease as a result. Going back down to the non-spendable category, that one did go up about $270-ish thousand, and that was related to some prepaid insurance premiums. So again, we've spent the money in 21 for 22 services, and therefore we can't spend it on something else. So that's why it becomes non-spendable. The next page, and let me go forward here, talks about fund balance and compares it to your annual expenditures in the general fund. So again, isolating that general fund and trending that out over time. So we're taking the assigned and the unassigned fund balance totals and trending it out over 5 years when we compare that assigned and unassigned total to the annual expenditures that are made out of that general fund. The village does have a policy that this ratio or this percentage that results from that calculation should fall between 16 and 25%. That is a pretty standard range that we see for our clients. The Government Finance Officers Association, in fact, recommends no lower than about 16, 17%, which represents, I believe, 2 months on hand, if we put that into an annualized term. And 25% is kind of that top end in the village policy, and that is, again, very standard. What that does is we want to try to, stay within this range to make sure we have enough reserves on hand, in case something were to come up and we need to fund it out of those reserves. If we're getting higher than that, we may consider what we can do to bring that back down into that range. Now, you can see from this chart here that the village is actually, that fund balance ratio has actually been above that policy range for the last 5 years, anywhere between 35 to 45%. So even with that, the decrease and the unassigned total in 21, you're still well above your recommended policy or that range that you're shooting to land in every year. All right, I will pause there. Any questions on fund balance or the general fund?
Trustee Jan Miller?
So the question that arises to me is, the last 5 years, we've been 36% or higher. And maybe it's not a question for you, but maybe it's a question for our administrator. Why are we keeping that fund balance so high?
Turn your mic on.
See, my microphone up.
No.
I have to steal the attorneys.
He's not using it.
The board made a kind of a policy decision when we were planning, in particular for the Public Works building back in 2017, 2018, that in order to try to hold down the debt service costs for the Public Works building, that we would utilize some of the fund balance that was available in excess of that 25%. So when we adopted this year's budget, the board made the decision not to bond for the roughly $3.5 million we usually spend on our capital budget. This year, when we do capital budgets, capital projects, we'll be paying for them out of the fund balance. So next year, you'll see that number get much closer to the 25%. That's the top of the range. And the trade-off for that is then we're skipping a year of issuing debt for the capital budget, and people will see that reduction in their property tax bills.
So this number where we're at right now, 40%, that's going to change dramatically in 2022.
That will drop. The 40% is about $7.5–8 million, and we're going to use almost half of that. So we'll see that drop down to about the 25% range.
So it's critical that we get the 2022 done. So how long has Baker Tilly been doing, I'm relatively new on the board, been doing the audits?
I don't know the exact number of years, but I've been with the firm for over 20 years, and I know I've worked on the audit for most of those years.
Oh, that's a long time. Great. When are you, have you already started the 2022 audit?
Yeah, we started the planning process for it. So we're just, we just wrapped up the 21 audit, and we're really prioritizing what needs to be done in the short term with some statutory reporting that needs to get done first. So
from the 2021,
for
right?
22.
Oh, for 22. Okay. All right. Those were mine. Questions.
Any other questions?
All right, we'll move on to general obligation debt. So again, this is kind of an area that outsiders look at to see, well, how much debt do you have? How much room do you have to issue debt and so forth? So general obligation debt, you may be aware, is secured by the tax levy of the village. And so there is a statutory limitation as to how much debt, GO debt or general obligation debt can be issued by any municipality in the state, and that equals 5% of your annual equalized value. So if you look at this chart on here, you'll see that the black line on the top actually represents that 5% of your equalized value, which goes up, most years, and because your equalized value goes up, so that debt capacity continues to increase. And then the actual general obligation debt is represented by that green line on the bottom. So the difference between those two amounts is quite high. The cap is about 158 million. The actual general obligation debt outstanding is about 43 million. So you're at about 27% of your limit. That is actually, like when I think about my client load, with a growing community, we usually see that percentage a lot higher. So just an FYI that, that's actually a pretty low percentage compared to a lot of my clients. The other thing to note is that at least half of that 43 million is related to TIF districts. And so those are generating the tax increment or that, a tax increment to pay over half of that outstanding debt. The rest of that is getting, taxed through or levied through the tax roll to be paid. You'll see a little table here on the right that shows the total amount of GO debt outstanding. That's the village is responsible, which includes the TIF districts. The utilities have a small share of that. The utilities also have some outstanding revenue debt. I believe that's the water utility, and the sewer utility has the GO debt. There's also a small lease out there that you'll see there as well. Any questions on the general obligation debt? All right. We'll move on to the water and sewer utilities. Here we take a look at, for the water utilities specifically, the rate of return. As you know, the PSC regulates what the water utility charges, and there's a goal rate of return of about 1%, which basically is how much are we earning in customer revenues compared to the infrastructure we have in the water utility. So your mains and your treatment plants and pumping and wells and that kind of thing. So that 1% is actually a pretty low percentage, but it can be a significant amount of dollars when you compare the vast number that is represented by the water utility assets that are out there. We have a chart here also trending out the operating income of the water utility for the past 5 years. And you'll see the green line would be the operating revenues, so your customer charges, compared to the black line, which are the operating revenues. So that's going to be your supplies, your payroll, all of those types of things, maintenance work, to keep the water utility running. And so in the last few years, the expenses have actually exceeded the revenues from an operating standpoint. And so that rate of return is actually calculated to be a negative. You're trying to, get between 0 and 1%. So that's a pretty small, goal to shoot for, a range there. However, as we know, expenses tend to increase on a regular basis. And so the water rates have to keep up with that in order to keep, cash flowing in order to pay for operations and debt, as well as future improvements as well. There are some chart or tables on the right side of this slide that talk about the unrestricted reserves. So that's basically what kind of cash do we have on hand that isn't reserved for some purpose. Most reserves are for future debt service. But there's about 1.35 million in the water utility, and that represents about 6.5 months of revenues. So you can get through about half of your year with the cash that you have on hand. There's very little debt outstanding for the water utility. So you'll see that here in that bottom line where it shows about 2% of debt outstanding in comparison to the rest of the equity is 98%. So that means that there's not, you're not leveraging a lot of debt to pay for, the improvements that are made to the water utility. And finally, and I can take questions afterward, but finally, the sewer utility, we have some similar information here. The one difference being that the sewer isn't regulated by the PSC. So the village has a little bit more freedom in determining what those rates look like. There isn't a specific rate of return that's actually calculated for this. So here, we're trying to make sure that, again, you're cash flowing, you're generating enough customer revenues to cover your costs. So here you'll see that for the first time in a few years, the expenses, exceeded the revenues. Big part of that is actually depreciation of the utility plant. So that does go into your operating revenue or expenses, even though it's a non-cash expense. So that's just to make sure that your rates are sufficient in order to be able to cover the depreciation, which represents, well, we have to, eventually replace the plant, the pipes and everything that are in the ground. And so that depreciation represents, that mindset there. Also, MMSD charges went up about 100,000 since the previous year. So we did have some increases in just the general operations there, as well as the depreciation amounts. Again, unrestricted reserves here, the sewer utility has about 10 months of cash, unrestricted reserves on hand. Again, a good place to be, no concerns there. And then the amount of debt outstanding for the sewer utility is relatively minimal, as well as only about 6% of the utilities assets are financed by debt. All right, that concludes my presentation with these particular graphs. Are there any other questions I can field?
Trustee Kaminsky?
More of a comment than a question. Thank you. And I think this report does show, particularly in the area of debt, that we are doing a good job of managing that. And I think we always have, for those of us who have been on the board for quite some time. My only thing is I can't wait to see the 2022 audit as well, because I know this snapshot is going to look very different from that snapshot. And so the quicker we can get that done, I think the happier we'll be and the more knowledge we'll have moving forward.
Further questions? Trustee Baum?
Just to confirm, your Germantown water utility results page, that was prior to our wage increase, our price increase?
Yes.
So our numbers are much different today. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
All right, thank you very much.
thank you. That's everything for then, the audit? Yep. All right. Then that takes us to the next item under new business, which is the audio visual system and Channel 25 update. For information on that, we'll turn the meeting over to the village administrator, Steve Krecklow.
And this is a fairly brief report this evening. And this is on the item, this item is on the agenda, was requested by 2 trustees that it remain on the agenda until Channel 25 is operational again. as I believe I reported at the last meeting, the system has passed what the Spectrum refers to as the soak test. So it was passed on to Spectrum to do the channel build phase of the project. And that's where they take the feed from Village Hall and they basically configure that so that it can be sent out to Spectrum cable users in their homes. So they told us that that would be a 6 to 8 week process that would finish at the end of April or the beginning of May. We have been reaching out to the project manager from Spectrum on a weekly basis, asking for updates, and he had no update this week. So we're still, as the best information we have is that we're still expecting that process is complete and Channel 25 becomes operational again for board meetings and other committee meetings and towards the end of April or beginning of May. So we are getting close to that time period.
Questions? Trustee Jan Miller.
Do you have an update for the audiovisual system? I noticed our on-air light is not on.
It would be Channel 25, what would be on air.
Yes.
I'm just talking about audiovisual, not the Channel 25.
The audiovisual system is working. We are broadcasting on WebEx and streaming is available on YouTube as well. So that is functioning fine. And we will have to make sure that when Channel 25 is up and operating again, that there will be some work involved in then making sure that the audiovisual connects with Channel 25. But we have no reason to believe that that won't come together. I'm sure it'll take some effort, but that should come together in late April, early May as well.
Can you clarify which meetings will be on WebEx, available on WebEx? Because I thought I talked to our regular audiovisual guy and he said he was only doing it for 2 meetings. And when I asked you and Angel, it was 4 specific village meetings.
Sure. We have some additional assistance that comes in for the village board meeting and plan commission. And they work in the back room there. They're operating the cameras, adding sort of an additional level of sophistication to the broadcast. We do on WebEx also make available the standing committee meetings, Public Works and Highway Committee, the Public Safety Committee, and the General Government and Finance Committee. But we do not have additional outside help that comes in to operate the cameras. Basically, they're on. There is some functionality that they do automatically, but otherwise it's just a wide shot of the dais for those meetings.
It was not on for the public safety meeting last time.
There was public safety was started late. It was the meeting night was changed and there was some miscommunication about when it was going to get started and who was going to start it. There was some help that was needed that wasn't there at the beginning of the meeting.
It got turned off.
Got
from the
turned
Public Works meeting. And then it was brought back on. Erin Hearn was contacted and she put it back on for WebEx. So that Trustee Jolene Pieper could join in to that public safety meeting and participate.
Chief Dillon had to help. So I just want to make sure that that the public meetings are covered by someone and just turn it on, turn it off, and it's clear by staff. Thank you.
Other questions on discussion of the audiovisual system and Channel 25 update? No other questions. We can go on then to item C under new business, the discussion concerning potential changes to the summer sewer credit. Village Administrator.
This has been an item that, sorry, the microphone? It's on the
red.
light,
Oh, okay. You got the weird one. Okay,
yeah.
thanks.
So this is an item that was a topic of discussion at a couple of utility advisory committee meetings recently, as well as the Public Works and Highway Committee. And I think the recommendation from both of those committees is to make some modifications to the summer sewer service credit. The two modifications that were recommended were to change the calculation so that instead of utilizing the first and second quarter to calculate the credit, and the formula would be modified to use the first and the fourth quarter to calculate the credit. And the second recommendation is to apply the credit to the second quarter bills as well as to the third quarter bills. And again, this was reviewed at length at both of the committees and recommended for approval. The one comment that I will add is just to kind of further explain the issue with the utility billing system. One component of the utility billing system that is now operating and live from Tyler Munis is this summer sewer service credit, which does require some additional work for configuration. That was not delivered in March with the remainder of the utility billing module because there was a change in the formula that the village board approved in September. So we had to go back to Tyler Munis and modify the project schedule with them so that they had time to put in the change that was made by the village board in September. We have contacted them and that was scheduled to be delivered to the village on May 19th with the assumption that we would be applying it to the third quarter bills in September. So we did go back to Tyler Munis and ask if they would be able to make the additional change to the formula and still deliver that functionality on May 19th as scheduled. And they did confirm that they could deliver that the sewer service credit functionality on May 19th as scheduled. However, the testing and the training for that functionality was not scheduled until later in the year. The training was not scheduled until into June, and that was when the testing was to take place as well. So we are talking with Tyler Munis. I don't have an answer tonight on if we delay the bill for a week or two, would we be able to complete the testing? It is something that we are working on to see if that is a feasible alternative. I guess what I would tell the village board is that if the village board does move forward with these changes, staff will do everything that we can to make sure that that the bills go out accurately, that we complete what testing and whatever training we can before those bills go out. I wouldn't expect that there would be any issues with the credit, with the summer sewer service credit when it's delivered on May 19th. But there is some level of risk that that functionality won't work as it is as expected to. But as I said, if this is something the board goes forward to, we'll do our best to make it work and work with Tyler Munis to adjust their schedule and if necessary, adjust our schedule to do so as well.
Board? Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to revert back to the formula prior to 2022. That would be Q1 plus Q4 divided by 2 times 1.15. And also request a rate study for the sewer utility.
I'll second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion to approve? Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, as one of the things, this is probably one, the biggest reason that the Utility Advisory Committee has been meeting for the past few months, along with some other things. And this came through with no recommendation of Public Works, but ultimately it did come with a recommendation to revert back to this with the full village board. In addition to that, the Utility advisory committee has been asking for RFPs to do the sewer rate study. So I think that is something, this is just kind of a cleanup thing in order to do that. That's the desire though, is to do an RFP for the sewer rate.
We have a motion and a second, village attorney.
So the second part of that, the rate study is not on the agenda. So I
Oh,
think you would have to
sorry,
take
it
that
was-
piece out of the motion.
All right, I'll take that back.
All right, so then your motion is to, can you state your motion again then, please?
Yeah, I can rephrase it. Sorry, I was looking at the public works agenda item. I'll make a motion to revert back to the prior 2022, prior to 2022 summer sewer credit, which is Q1 plus Q4 divided by 2 times 1.15.
That is your motion. And the second, is that okay with the second then?
Yeah, whoever you wrote down. Was it me or Phil?
Trustee
Okay.
Chan Miller is in the
Yes.
second.
Yes, it's okay.
All
with
right.
me.
Any discussion on that motion? Trustee Hudson?
Define some level of risk for me, please.
I would say that, and I've worked on a number of implementations. Haven't, I haven't used functionality live before that hasn't been tested. So I can't really quantify what the level of exactly what the level of risk is.
So have you, in your past experience, how many times has the testing shown that the program doesn't work?
This is a fairly simple configuration. It's not, it's not like running a payroll, for example, where you have, instead of a half a dozen moving parts in a payroll system, you might have, 3 or 4 dozen moving parts. So there's much more risk in running a payroll. On a fairly simple configuration like this, and I'm really kind of pulling a number just off the top of my head here, but I would say 90% of the time it runs well. It runs as it's designed to run. So I would not anticipate that there would be any problems, but there is a insignificant risk that that there would be a problem.
Okay, and then, so there's a 10% chance of a disaster. So what is a disaster, please?
A disaster would be that the credits are calculated incorrectly and applied incorrectly.
Only if they're too low.
So, and to be quite blunt, it's things that we've experienced in the past.
So if we delay the billing for a month, does that bias that additional 10%, Steve, or
If
how do we
Tyler,
mitigate that?
if Tyler Munis is able to change their staff schedules. So basically, when we're working on this project, and they have, the people that we're working with are working on a half a dozen projects at a time. So everything gets, it gets plugged in and segmented in specific weeks. And the schedule as it stands right now would not allow us to do that. We will work with them to see what we're able to accomplish. Right now, a lot of this the training was scheduled in June. Their staff was scheduled to be on site in September when the bills were produced. So we'll need to see if we're able to adjust those dates and adjust the billing dates. The other thing, just to point out, when we do if we were to adjust the billing dates, we would have a significant amount of contacts at the village. You know, even when we put that out on Facebook and social media, we get a lot of calls from people then who are not, "Well, I didn't get my bill, what happened?" And so there is that issue as well, another consideration to take into account, that we'll be getting a lot of those contacts and questions and concerns from residents if we go that route. So I think it's something I don't have complete information for you tonight on whether or not it would help or hurt us to delay the billing and see if we can get Tyler Munis in. I think if the board makes this decision to change the rate, we'll work on that, and that's something we can report back to the board on in May to let you know what our plan is for implementing this and how we're able to adjust to make it as smooth as possible.
Thank you.
Trustee Rick Miller.
One important question I forgot to ask is, does Tyler Munis have the Q4 data in order to do the calculation?
I'm going to defer to our acting interim finance director who's been working on the project for that question.
Q4 consumption data should be or is in the utility billing system. So they would have the data. If there was any issues on usage history prior, we wouldn't be able to catch those without a test, but for the most part, just doing some scanning, most of the prior year's history and usage is correct in the system. Without a test, I wouldn't catch those errors, but the Q4 consumption is in the system, yes.
Thanks.
Trustee Kaminsky.
How long does a test take?
Typically, they're full billing cycles, and they typically take a week for a test. When we went live or when we implemented the majority of the utility billing system, we did 3 to 4 tests over the course of several months. But they take about a week because you do a full billing cycle to make sure everything's correct.
And do you do everybody in that test? You just take a sampling and say, this is working out, or?
We do everybody.
Okay.
For the summer sewer corridor, we might only do residential since it only applies to residential. But we typically do everybody.
Okay. I think, we've put so much time and effort into trying to reverse this and get this right. And I think it is important to note that at the Public Works Committee meeting where we did make this recommendation that we really want to go back to Q1 and Q4. We really want to do that. But as our trustee just mentioned, we want to make sure we can do this right because we can't really have another debacle like we had last year. So, I mean, if you have, keep us posted as to what Tyler Munis can say and what would be our plan B. Because if we keep things the way they are, we're going to have the same people being very upset, at every meeting again. We can't do that. And I think our promise is that we can do better than that. And so this is ideal if we can make this work. But I think as a village board, we take responsibility for this. This is not our village administrator. We're making this decision if we make it. Okay? I mean, that's a fact. The other thing we did mention at the Public Works Committee, just for reference for people listening, is that we did tie this to the sewer rate study that Trustee Miller brought up. And it's tied to that with the understanding that it might show that 1.5 is way too low, and that we may have to use a different ratio and everything moving forward to make more money. That all could come out of this rate study. And we made sure that people in the audience understood that. And that's the only other comment I wanted to make. But Steve, we really want this to work. And I think we need to know what Tyler Munis has to say and what they tell us about timing, and if we can at least run a partial test, if not 3 billing cycles, 1 or whatever, to really make this work. I mean, I would feel great if they actually said yes to that.
And we can report back at the May 1st Village Board meeting, give you an update on that.
Further discussion? Trustee Jan Miller.
I just wanted to, I agree with you, Trustee Kaminsky, and I just wanted to mention that we have successfully sent out 1 billing cycle with the other formula, correct?
Correct. The first quarter utility bills were sent through the Munis system.
Yeah, Tyler Munis. So that's very encouraging. And we even got a couple of compliments. So I just wanted to throw that in too. So I am for getting back to the basic, what's on the table right now.
Further discussion? Trustee Myers?
Is the motion that's before us with or without testing?
I think the motion before us is basically going back to the formula as stated, Q1 plus Q4 divided by 2 times 1.15.
Without the test?
Well, it's just to revert the summer sewer credit back to what it was previously. So in order to answer your question, there is nothing in the motion that states or defines a test. It's merely information brought forward by our village administrator on his thoughts and comments in regards to making that formula change within Tyler Munis and going live with it based on the schedule that they currently have for training and implementation.
Basically speaking, we have to have another motion to request a test?
I think we need some information back from Tyler Munis as to what they can do to help staff that or for training. I mean, I would prefer when I think about this, I think it'd be imperative that we have some sort of test, even if it does delay the billing. We need to gain residents' confidence back again of our billing system is right and correct. And with that, I think a test helps us to verify that what we're putting out there is correct. So if that means it delays it slightly, I would be okay with that. As long as what we know once the billing would be initiated, that we have better confidence or more confidence in knowing it's correct. But I think we need some information back at May 1st meeting to make sure we can initiate that and implement that based on information we'll get back from Tyler Munis.
Thank you for your answers.
You're welcome. Further discussion on the motion as stated? No further discussion? Let's just do a roll call vote for this, please.
Trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Baum,
Aye.
Trustee Hudson,
Aye.
Trustee Kaminsky, Trustee Myers,
Aye.
Trustee Nyrather, President Walter.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Matt. Next item on the agenda is item D, policy discussion concerning use of all-terrain vehicles on village roads.
So this came through public safety. I think Trustee Rick Miller was approached by some residents who had identified that some of our neighboring communities had adopted ordinance changes to allow for ATVs usage on the roads of the various communities. As we identify in the memo that's in the packet, there's really two ways that we can do that. There is the way that we can basically control everything other than like the interstate, which would be one method, but that applies only to roads that have a speed limit that's 35 or less. There is also a process that allows us to designate routes at higher speeds, but that can be only roads that we have jurisdiction over. So it couldn't be a state highway, it couldn't be a county highway, would just be local roads on that. And so the thought, I think from committee was to take the temperature of the board to see whether or not it made some sense for them to expend the energy to go through crafting the ordinance, creating a map of where these things might be allowed, just to see if there was any appetite to do that. And so the question would be for the board this evening, just one, is there any appetite to do that? And then two, is there any sense or guidance on high speed versus lower speed if there's a preference?
Trustee Rick Miller.
Obviously, I'm going to have something to say. Yeah, this was brought up by several residents about using ATVs. The idea was to tie into existing communities that have this, and the town of Jackson is the closest municipality. If first off, yeah, we want to take the temperature and see if this is something we want to pursue. Second of all, though, if we do the 35-mile-an-hour thing, we become an island because all the roads that tie into the town of Jackson are higher than 35 miles an hour. And our rural roads are typically 40, almost always 40 for village roads. So what I would say is that we do want to, if this is something we want to go forward with, we do want to consider the higher speed roadways and create a map of those routes. It wouldn't be village-wide. It would be logical routes that tie into the town of Jackson right now and maybe some other municipalities later on.
Trustee Hudson?
So this is one of those subjects that I know very little. So who can drive an ATV? Is it any licensed driver or can a 14-year-old kid pop in one of these and zip down the road?
Chief, do you know? That's the question I don't know the immediate answer to. My guess is that once you're on the roadway, operating on a roadway, that you would need to be a licensed driver, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
We could make that rule as part of our ordinance.
It would depend on what the statute says. Statute may dictate otherwise.
Yeah, they would certainly need the ATV safety certification, I believe it's called. Anybody over a certain age to be on any designated trail has to have that safety certification.
So if I interpret that and tell me if I'm not interpreting that correctly, is we could have a 12-year-old driving in the middle of rush hour in one of these, as long as they have the ATV safety class? Is that?
That is my understanding if it's designated as a trail.
And then second set of questions is, are these licensed vehicles or can I just go and buy one? Is it like a boat or no?
If I'm understanding your question, it does have to be registered.
Okay. And what about lighting for dusk and at night?
So lighting, they are equipped with taillights, with headlights, some more extravagant, some do have directional, some don't. The statute would basically require that anything that they are manufactured with be operable. But they would at the very least have headlamps and tail lamps.
And then, so helmets are optional, I assume?
Not at a certain age.
But helmets?
I believe under 16 is.
Okay. And again, I know nothing about, very little about ATVs. Seatbelts or no seatbelts?
The UTVs are equipped with seatbelts.
See, now I have to ask another question. What's the difference between a UTV and an ATV?
The utility vehicle is basically a side-by-side, looks like a go-kart on steroids. The ATV is more of a one-person vehicle,
So
unless
can-
it's specifically designed as a two-up.
So can I build one of these?
Can you build one?
Because I can build a go-kart.
And then get it registered?
I think that would be the issue, is whether they qualify for registration. I would have to look into that.
Yeah. That's all the questions I have for today. Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky?
Sounds crazy to me. Germantown is growing so fast. You point out any road around here that's 30 miles an hour or even 35 and less. I don't want to encounter some kid, seatbelts probably optional, even if they're in there, without wearing a helmet, and I end up hitting him and I end up changing the rest of my life because this kid really didn't know how to drive in traffic. I mean, kid can even be a 15-year-old. I am just so not, I'm so against this. ATVs, go find your trails somewhere, go drive on land, take your ATV up north, but I just would not approve this.
Trustee Nyrider.
Chief Snow, as long as you're standing there, can I just ask you, do you have an opinion on this?
I did have a discussion with the county chiefs. Several of them do have roadways in their jurisdiction where it's legal. And what I can say is they did not have the issues that some of them anticipated having. There wasn't an explosion of ATV or UTV use in their communities. Some of the safety concerns, they did not see any real issues with. So no strong feelings one way or the other, but discussing even with the sheriff, they haven't had the issues that a lot of them thought they would.
Thank you.
Trustee Baum.
I live out in the country, and I'm sure our chief can attest that I am probably one of the most vocal people calling the police station. I live on one of the most dangerous intersections in this village. And what I am calling about is, in the summertime, kids on different type of motorized vehicles, not being able to control them and coming up to that intersection, not even stopping, with 55-mile-an-hour cars flying by my house. I've got skid marks in my yard. I've got car parts in my yard half the summer. There are skid marks down the street from me from kids doing burnouts. And it is, a lot of this is younger kids, especially on the ATVs. It's the younger kids not knowing how to control these, not having rules of the road. I am not going to be one to support this.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I have the same concerns as was stated before, and there wasn't any map included in there was at public safety, but unless, one of the questions I had in public safety for the gentleman that presented from the club was, what is your goal? What is your destination? Are you looking to build paths or, trails? I just think it's a much safer thing to do, or I would off the road, like it's off-roading. That's what I thought it was designed for. So I'm not in favor of putting it on the road at this time, because as a pedestrian just walking around and around the subdivision, cars are going over 25 miles an hour, and they could, they've almost taken me out. So I think more study has to be done on this. And if there is another community that really wants to connect with us, have them come forward.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Couple things. First off, this only pertains to ATVs. ATV is like a four-wheel motorcycle. You sit on top of it, all right? And UTVs, which is a side-by-side. Good analogy, probably a golf cart on steroids is probably a better analogy of it. You've seen mules everywhere and every fairgrounds and all that type of stuff. Those are the things that we're talking about, those two items, not motorcycles, not little, mini motorcycles, anything like that. I don't know if I have the support for it. I know Trustee Pieper was, because she co-signed this. But this is becoming very common in the state. I mean, we had a presentation from the Kettle Moraine ATV Association president, and he rode from the town of West Bend all the way to the UP and back, legally, on roads and on trails. So this is an interconnected thing within the state already. We just want to extend it a little bit farther south.
So the question is this something you want to pursue and look at for an ordinance, to develop an ordinance for the village of Germantown, or is this something that you don't want to pursue? And basically you'd be then assigning, if you want to pursue it, the village attorney to look at surrounding communities and the state statute and draft an ordinance that he feel would be proposed to the board to either look at, change, recommend, or deny. No, we don't have any motion because it's just a discussion.
So just quickly glancing at the statute, just for the purposes of information, it does appear that for both ATVs and UTVs, you would not be able to operate those on a roadway if you are under the age of 16, unless you are supervised by a parent. And so you could arguably, but theoretically, you're supervised at that point.
Board? What's your consensus? We need to provide direction, or you can just put forward something that we could each say yay or nay on. I mean, put it this way: do we want to move forward with the creation of an ordinance and look at what type of ordinance would be created for Germantown to allow ATVs and UTVs on certain designated roadways, not all roadways. You would designate.
Why isn't it in here as requiring a motion? I don't get that.
Because it was proposed to bring forward to see if the village board wanted to pursue it.
Called a motion.
Well, if you want a motion it's more of a directive. It's not a motion in regards to you're approving an ordinance. You're basically directing staff to create. So you could make a motion along those lines if you like.
I don't support it. There's nothing in here requiring a motion. I'm going to go on record saying I do not support it.
Okay?
I'll second that.
You said a motion.
No, but I'll second what you said.
All right. Kaminsky, no. Bohm, no.
Miller, yes.
Miller, yes.
Rick, Jan Miller, no.
No. Trustee Hudson. Trustee Baum's a no. Trustee Nyrider.
No.
Trustee Myers. President Walter. Sorry, Rick, I'm a no. I can think of a lot of reasons of why other communities are approving it. Some of those are more rural, but I don't think there's anybody south of Jackson right now that has that connectivity. We'd be the first one south of Jackson.
Yeah, the parallel would be Aaron, but they're west.
Again, a more rural
Yeah.
community.
Mhm.
And I understand the attraction of it and the ability to travel in all areas of the state and going all the way up to, I think you went up to International Falls, and I've done that drive on the interstate. If he went out on a UTV, congratulations, because that's a long drive. But I think, again, he went through a fair amount of rural communities that had that connectivity. But as of right now, we'd have to look at some other considerations or another way to present this to the board to make it more amenable. So right now, there is no appetite or a requirement for the village attorney to spend funds to draft an ordinance. Okay, anything else on item D? We can then go to item E, which is Colgate BP, located at North 96 West 21962 County Line Road, Class A liquor and Class A fermented malt beverage license. Summit Cohen is the agent.
Motion to approve new business E.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve new business item E. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve? No discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Next item under new business is item F, Police Department Non-Representative Employee Salaries. More information on this new business item. Again, we'll turn it over to Village Administrator.
Thank you, and I'll just make a few comments, and Chief Snow is here as well. I know he'd like to make a couple of comments, but as the village board is well aware, Germantown, like a lot of communities, has seen turnover in the police department, and I think you're seeing things in the news where there are a lot of departments that are having greater challenges than we are. It's not uncommon for communities now to be offering, up to $10,000 signing bonuses for new police officers. And as we've had turnovers, one of the things that I've seen as administrator is we're very fortunate to have experienced and highly qualified command staff that in the police department that are able to train and manage the influx of new people. And I think I know one of the village board's key goals for the village as a whole is employee retention. And Chief Snow has put together a proposal that's really aimed at that, as we see more communities that are trying to hire command staff from other jurisdictions and lure people away, that he's put together a proposal that's here tonight to try to help retain our staff and keep them here in the village of Germantown.
Before we go to Chief Snow's presentation, can we just have a definition of who is considered police department non-representative employee salaries for everybody on the board and everybody that's listening?
I didn't catch. Say, Chief, I'll maybe let you address that one.
So that would be our dispatchers, our command staff. And this discussion, the sergeants were not included. They are, and I can talk a little bit more about that. They are an exempt, or I'm sorry, they are non-exempt. My sheet kind of got my asterisks mixed around. It was correct for every county but Washington. The sergeants basically are the non-exempt position at every agency, other than Hartford's sergeants, I believe, were exempt. And that would include our clerical positions as well.
Okay, thank you.
And I'm trying to get back to my display. I fat thumbed it and closed it all out. There it is. The reason I've come forward with this, when I took the chief's position and set my goals, they included staffing issues, they included a new building, they certainly included hiring and retaining qualified personnel, and that is getting to be a challenge. One of the more recent League of Municipality publications, I think it's just called Municipalities, discussed specifically law enforcement and called it a crisis. That was the word they used. They said it was a crisis, and I agree with that. The crisis being hiring at the entry level and retaining those people that we have, and that's getting exceedingly challenging. Mr. Kruckle referenced the $10,000 bonus. There was a municipality just to the south of us now offering a $10,000 bonus. I've talked to officers that have left here that are in Minnesota, and they've been at 3 different agencies in the last decade because they're chasing bonuses. I'm not here to discuss officer salaries right now, but I think it is part of the big picture to say, stay here, put the work in, show us you're committed. When you get those positions, when you get promoted, you're going to be rewarded for that. I want them to be able to see that. I think it's important. And I think I will retain them when they see that. We have phenomenal officers here. We have a phenomenal command staff. I couldn't be more pleased with the department that we have. That's not what this is about. It's not, we don't have any quality issues. We have outstanding people. I want to keep them. We are seeing officers in their early 50s retire. That's retiring early. That's leaving a lot on the plate when you look at the Wisconsin retirement system. It amazes me, quite frankly. But they're doing it, and I want to keep them. I want to keep them here. That's a ton of experience that's walking out the door. We had another lieutenant that left this year that is still vital. He still had years that he could have been here. I want to show the remaining staff that we have left that stay here. You're going to be taken care of. But you can see the comparables I did, and that's kind of why we're here. We are falling behind. Germantown, for years, we talk about it amongst ourselves. We were the gold standard. And we're falling behind in some of those comparables. I understand Menominee Falls is a much larger agency. Mequon is not. But I would also ask you to remember the activity that we're dealing with. We're dealing with Metro Milwaukee activity. Our guys are busy. Our command staff is busy. You already understand the challenges I'm having with dispatchers, maintaining them. We're back up to 8. We're back with full staff, and we're trying hard to stay there. We've got great people, great new dispatchers that are excited to be there. But we want to make sure that we're able to retain them. The numbers I put together, you'll see in several of those positions with the dispatchers, with lieutenants, they're tiered position. The idea being a starting tier. After 1 year, you would go to tier 2. The third tier would be tied into some training goals or some certification specifically for the lieutenant would be getting that command staff or command level executive training, whether that be FBI NA, Northwestern Staff and Command, or Wisconsin has a comparable course that we've been sending some of our officers, some of our command staff through. But that's where those numbers come from, and I try to maintain about a 6%. When you look at the lieutenants to a captain to that chief position and looking at that basically 6% differential. When you look at the other comparables, those go anywhere from 3 to 20%. I randomly, I guess, picked that 6% kind of differential to keep some type of, to address any compression issues, I guess. So I would entertain any questions or anything that I can explain better. I'm happy to try to do that for you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
Yeah, just so I understand correctly, Chief. Okay, I'm on the page after your memo, and there it says communications. It has 3 tiers. Lieutenant has 3 tiers. You know which page I'm talking about? Clerical, and has the 3 tiers.
Yes, I'm on.
And then what does, tell me what it means here. Like you have the column that says annually and the different figures under it, and then 2023 with the different figures under it.
Yeah, and I did a terrible job of explaining that. So annually is just the additional cost and what that additional cost is going to mean for our 2023 budget.
So 2023, so to take care of communications, however many people are in that area, it would cost $24,753.
Yeah.
The remainder of 2023, and moving forward next year annually, it'd be the 37,130.
Correct.
Okay.
I believe I used I think I used an April date, which is obviously not going to be that. So the costs are going to be a little different, but generally speaking,
Okay,
that's what we're
so,
looking for 2020.
so you're hoping that this would be implemented yet, like next month or whatever, hopefully.
Correct.
And so then I would turn to Steve Kreklow and say, where would that money come from?
We have taken a look at some different options. I think that what we're recommending for 2023 is that we would utilize general fund reserves to fund that. And then we would have to, this would become a major initiative in the 2024 budget to find ways to fund it for the entire year.
So we would fund it then for next year in our budget process, we have to come up with that money. And even if, are there unfilled positions in the village right now, other than engineer, which we are not finding anybody right now? Is there anything unfilled?
There are a few, you know, for example, we talked in general government and finance earlier this evening, and there's some restructuring, but there's 1 vacant position there. There's a vacant position in community development that we're getting ready to move forward with filling. But there are very few vacant positions. I believe, I haven't talked to Chief Delane lately, but I believe we just filled the battalion chief position.
And we can't afford to take anything away from the fire department. I'm just looking for ways to fund this moving forward, because I totally support this, but we have to know where the money's going to come from.
What's the total for this year? For all 3?
For this year, the total cost would be
71,855.
71. And the annual cost would be 107. So if you look at that, and we were talking about the 2024 budget, that would be more than half of what our anticipated allowable levy increase would be for 2024.
That's a whole person.
Pardon?
That's a whole person.
Well, I mean, This is the dilemma here. And we can look at this piecemeal because I don't want to lose anybody. And when I look at our chief's salary, I'm like, come on, we can do better than this. You know, when you look at how close he is to a captain, and there has to be some spread there. Now, I guess this didn't go through GGF, did it? For analysis, did it go through public safety, or where'd this come from?
It went through public safety. Oh, no.
It was GGF.
GGF, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Was it when I was gone, on vacation?
Yes.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I'm looking at this and I'm saying we have to make some improvements, but did we decide that these were the exact figures, I guess is what I'm asking. If anybody can remember what happened at that GGF meeting.
We didn't have the figure.
I think you had the figures. I think you felt that it, if I remember correctly, that it wasn't the time that you wanted to wait until the cow meetings, you know, for the next year. But that's it. That was a discussion and it wasn't moved anywhere. This is what I recall. But it's here because we need action and we don't want to lose anybody. And we have spent $350,000 buying a truck. I'm willing to spend or dig up $72,000 to keep staff and our police force for public safety.
I don't disagree with that. I still had the floor, I believe.
Oh, I'm
I don't
sorry.
disagree with that. But that truck for 350,000, which we need, is a one-shot deal. Easy to take that out of our reserves because it's not going to reoccur. Whenever you start taking a reoccurring expense out of a set fund, you're asking it to get a problem in the future. Now, I agree with Steve that 71,000 out of the reserve for this to cover us for the remainder of the year. I could go along with that. But moving forward, Steve just told us, this is half of our ability to increase taxes next year will be going to raises, not to people, not to anything else we might need, not to anything else we cut from the budget this year. And that kind of stops me a little bit. We definitely need a referendum for our police and fire department. I've said that before. I'm going to say it again, and we're crazy if we think there's any other way to do this.
That's besides what we're
You know,
talking about on
and
this
that's
item.
not what we're talking about tonight. So, but anyway, that's all I have to say.
Trustee Hudson?
Yeah, I agree with most of what Terry said. So I don't think I understood you correctly. So on the tiering, it's 1 year and they're automatically moved to tier 2. Is that correct or not correct?
Serving basically that 1 year probation, if you want to call it, and then moving up to that second tier.
Is that on all three?
Correct. And again, this was something I brought forward as I guess a starting point.
So if you come in on if you come in on the low side of tier 1 for an entry level position, right? You come in at $25.50 or $26. After 12 months, you're automatically moved up to 28.
I'm sorry, I have to get back on that page.
I'm at the same place where the same page that Terry was confused on. That's the same page I'm confused on.
Correct. You would, again, hypothetically with this plan, you would move up to that 28.
And then what if you come in at 28? So I assume you hire based on experience, right? So you bring Phil in, he's got no experience, you pay him the minimum. You bring Rick in, he's got experience, you pay him the maximum. So then after that 1 year where Phil goes from $25.50 to 28.
And I should take that back a little bit. I think there is absolutely more leeway here in that they are non-represented. I think we can set this up how we want to, that this is a starting point of salaries that I think are going to attract people as far as a minimum that $25.50 to start. And I think you could implement some more training requirements that'll give you more structure on, and some of those people that have that experience are probably going to meet those training requirements immediately, which is going to guide you on where to fit them in that matrix.
I'm good. Thank you.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I'd like to shed some good news. I was at Mid-Moraine Committee on last week, Wednesday night. And there is, at the state level, serious tax credits for public safety. In other words, they want to give, the bill is for their budget for July to give back to the municipalities for public safety. Both Tony Evers and Republicans have sent in budget items for that. So it should be a hot topic, and there should be some relief that we get from the state specifically for public safety. You can't say it's here, but it is a good proposal. It's coming from both sides. So,
It's proposed for each of their budgets
yes,
from Tony Evers and from the Republican majority.
yes. I'll get more information.
Trustee Myers.
Jan is right in regard to that aspect, but the important thing that you need to keep in mind is in the wording, the way it's worded, and that's where they're going to have the problem, I believe.
Yes, certainly, you know, the various alternatives that are being presented, you know, will need to be hammered out, and whether they'll reach an agreement or not, who knows? It ranges anywhere from we're going to share up to 2% of the state sales tax to municipalities for public safety purposes, to creating another exemption, kind of like exists with joint fire departments, for increased tax levy in certain circumstances. We just, it's too early to have any idea of what that relief is going to look like. But certainly both parties do seem to be in agreement that relief in some form needs to happen, but we'll see.
And I've heard similar things from our new state senator, Dan Knodel, that he is also in favor of looking at those options and seeing what monies can be designated to help communities with their public safety costs. So here we are. Trustee Kaminsky.
Just another question. I'm still on that same page. So currently, our communications person makes $25.50 to $28. Is that current? And
That is not current. I think their top pay is 23. I think their top pay is just over 26 now. I don't know, Pat, if that rings a bell.
So this represents an
27.
increase already, kind of. No?
Well, it would for most of them.
And they still will get their annual increase because they're exempt, right? Or not exempt, whatever you call it.
Right.
I mean, they're not union.
Whatever we would, as part of their, I would imagine, based on what we would decide as a village board and as part of their review and performance evaluations.
Okay, so somewhere we have what they're making now, somewhere, somebody has that. I feel like I'm working with like 80% of the information I need. That's all I can tell you. What are they making now? And how flexible are we on these numbers? If we can't do these numbers exactly, and we cut them by 3%, is that going to be a big deal? Is that going to ruin our retention hopes?
Village administrator.
You know, if I could suggest and kind of and I don't mean to step out of line here, but kind of what I'm hearing from the board is that generally there's support for
Absolutely.
the concept. And we did take this to GGF. It was, we've had this is a big topic, and there's a lot here to talk about. I do remember that meeting. We had a lot on the agenda, and our time was pretty compressed. I think that one suggestion would be to send it back to to GGF to get fleshed out a little bit further, to work through some of this, to add the other 20% of the information. And, you know, I think and I always know when these things come up, there's staff who are listening and paying attention. And I think there's positive feedback from the board on this, but we can do some more to work out the details.
Kaminsky, you still have the floor.
Speaking for myself, I totally support this. I just, like I said, best summary I can put to you is that I feel like I've got 82% of the information, and I'm just missing some facts, like how much is this person making now? How much would a tier one then? I'm just missing these links where I really don't know what they're making exactly. I know what the chief's making now and the lieutenant, and I think it's ridiculous that currently you're so close in your salaries. We have to do something about this. So, I mean, I think we support it, speaking for myself. Maybe it should come back to us for, I don't want to delay it any longer. I'm hoping it will move quickly.
Trustee Chan Miller.
It seems that most of the board is for adding employee salaries to the police department non-represented employees. And we don't have the exact details. Would you be willing to vote on it if we said cap it at a certain amount, like 80,000, and let the chief work within that range? And if it comes back at 7250, $72,500, is that a break?
I think it's an interesting idea, Jan, but I really feel for any constituents listening that we should know precisely what we're spending money on. So what currently is this person making? What currently is that communications person making? Nobody can tell me that tonight. Correct.
Right. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying.
I'm totally behind this, but I need to know that to know if the bottom line figures are correct.
And plan for next budget.
I know what you're saying, but I think that we also pass a lot of DPW. I'm just giving this as an example. Maybe it's not the same, but we have open, what do they call those? Contracts. And they say up
Purchase
to.
orders.
Thank you. Blank PO for $50,000, blank PO for 100, blank PO for 200,000. So can it come back?
Those are budgeted.
Understood.
Apples and chopped meat. I mean, that's how different.
I like chopped
the
meat.
comparison is.
Apples?
It's an idea.
Trustee Hudson.
So I think the majority of this board supports helping you out. And I guess my question to you is, given how the discussion has gone tonight, are we going to harm our relationship with the people that this affects if we wait 4 more weeks for it to go back to CGF and then come back to the board with the additional 18% of information?
No, we want to give you the best information available. If there was something that wasn't here, that's on me. I will have a more complete information for you the next time.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to send this back to CGF for some additional information and then to have it back to the board within 4 weeks,
Second.
5 weeks.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion as stated? Trustee Ball.
Do you understand the information we're looking for? Do we need to be more?
I can bring you back the salaries of every person that we're talking about. I certainly have that information that I can.
And just the increase, what you're proposing, obvious, no names.
Okay.
And final numbers of its impact
Yeah, Jane.
on this year's budget and next year's
That'd be great.
as a starting point. Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, I just want to understand, I mean, one of the things we need to do is come in line with our competition. And if these tiers are that, you know, if we are now in line with the other ones, that's the information that we also need to know. Not just what they're earning now, what the market is right now in these areas. And I think that's probably the more important question on this.
In other words, you're gonna
Because
do
I
it
don't want to
again.
pass something and say, oh, no, we're still out of market here. You know, we're still under market. That doesn't make any sense. If we're going to do this, let's do it right.
Further discussion, trustee Baum.
What happens if everybody else is doing the same thing? If Grafton is in the process of.
That's how it
raising
works.
theirs.
We can.
So we may still be at the bottom if we raise ours and everybody else does as well.
That's
I
next.
don't know if we were at the bottom. I mean, we used to set the standard, but I don't know if we're at the very bottom.
And I can tell you that everybody is. I'm aware of at least 4 communities in the area that presently are going through comp studies, so.
All right, further discussion on the motion. Trustee, I'm gonna go to trustee Myers and then I'll go back to you.
Chief, you also mentioned in regard to maybe tying it to different things or whatever. If you have some suggestions, you understand what I'm saying, what you mentioned before? Some of these increases in the different tiers, the different years, you talked about tying it to some standards or something that they need to do. So if you could come back with something in regard to that aspect too, it'd be nice, please.
Yeah, I will have that available as well.
Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky?
I changed my mind. I'm good.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Not opposed, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is item G, IT position for public safety.
I could
Village
maybe
Administrator.
Started, I know, Chief Snow's here, Chief Delane is on WebEx. If there are any, questions for him as well. This is a position that has gone through the, Public Safety Committee, and, GGF. And I think as we've talked about this in the past, we have Capital Data, on board now who handles all of the IT infrastructure work, dealing with the hardware, the major software, but where the police and the fire department and actually and through discussions, the Public Works Department feel that they could use some additional help is in sort of the frontline assistance of dealing with a desktop computer issue, or in the police department's case, maybe a dash camera not working, or some things like that. We're having somebody on site available who can help out with those functions would be helpful. And again, both for police, for fire, and also to DPW. The challenge that I see is, as we've talked about, the previous item is again, the funding. And, looking through the budget, there's not any place where we can reach in and just find the funding to pay for this position, either for this year or next year. So I know the board's question to me would be, if we added this position, where would we pay for it this year and how would we do it next year? And the answer that I would have is basically the same as what I gave for the previous item, that we could use general fund reserves to fund the position for this year, and then try to find that funding in the budget next year. But I would be concerned about doing both of these items. And in my opinion, and I believe the chief agrees with this, is that the taking care of the staff and the people is more important at this point than the IT position, if we're only able to do one of those things.
That's correct.
It is. I brought this up several months ago as just keeping the board informed of some of the struggles that we were having and the needs that we have. And this is certainly a need. We've never had so many sworn officers getting involved in IT things in the past, but we have recently out of necessity. So something we certainly need, but I feel very strongly that we need to take care of the people we have first.
Okay.
Trustee Jan Miller.
We have talked about the IT person for police and fire because of the Pro Phoenix format that you're on, which is different than what the village is on. Correct? And Mr. Kreklo, is the DPW on the Tyler Munis?
Police and DPW, all village departments will be using Tyler Munis.
Pro Phoenix is more of a scheduling.
The dispatch.
It's our operating system, it's our
And then
record management system, it's our computer-aided dispatch.
But only, is it true that only the police and fire have the Pro Phoenix?
It's like a module. Yes, because it's designated to public safety. It's what it does as far as any type of 911 calls, the scheduling of those people, equipment, or personnel. It helps to control that, you know, who's out, who is next available, what trucks are out and who's on them, those kinds of things. So, and when I look at this position for IT and designate it to one or a couple groups of the department within the village, the need is throughout the whole village. I'm not going to designate an IT person to just public safety, not that it's not needed, but there's an IT person needed in community development, in public works, in administration, in the village clerk's office, in finance office. It's needed everywhere. Anywhere that you now have everything that's tied into a computer, a system, or some sort of cloud-based networking, you need an IT person on the ground. We used to contract for it and we knew the limitations of that, and now it becomes a need. Without your IT functional and operational, you're losing the whole backbone to your system of the village, of what the village represents and who they represent. So I think it's up to us to find the monies to look for an IT position within the next budget. Because it's that dire of a need. I agree with Trustee Kaminsky that if we're looking to add the amount of officers that have been suggested from either department, that falls more into a referendum that the residents can decide. But when you're looking at support or supporting what's already established, I think that comes from general fund. And it's up to us to try to find a way to come up with that so that we can get a person in here that everybody within every department knows that they can rely on when they have IT issues. Something as simple as I can't open my Excel document today to my microphone doesn't work whenever I do a video conference. I mean, all those items come up on a regular basis. Trustee Kaminsky.
Would that person we're talking about, because I agree with you, we need an IT person on staff. Can that person learn Pro Phoenix? I mean, if your officers or people are learning it, they can learn that pretty readily if they don't know it?
I don't think it's that involved.
Yeah, I would think so. And there's a conference they can go to
Okay.
get more.
I would definitely support getting an IT person on staff, whatever that would take.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, when this came through GGF, I kind of asked the same question. Can we spread this out among the village? I think there's a need right now for a full-time person just in public safety. Obviously, we'll take a full-time person for the village and lean on them heavily. It's I had mentioned this before, but in my private life situation, I do have a on-person staff member that takes care of the other stuff and does managed services. I outsource that part of it. And I can see something like that working here. But in the interim, can we lean more on the managed service company? Maybe bring them in a little bit more, adjust the contract, something like that to get some assistance before we can go through the next budget period.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
It's something we could take a look at. We have had some discussions with Capital Data about it. If we were looking to do something on a not a full-time position type thing, we might almost be better off looking at somebody, a smaller independent contractor who focuses more on just like that end user type of assistance, we might be able to get a better rate than we do because they don't necessarily need to have all the backup and support that Capital Data has. So that's an option that.
I was just thinking like maybe 1 day a week or something like that they could be
But
on.
you'd also want the availability for off-site monitoring. So if you had an issue in your servers, they should be able to call in and look at it from a remote location. They shouldn't have to be on their
They do
floor.
that now.
Well, that is Capital Data,
Right.
and that would fall under Capital Data, I think. So those remote issues, I think.
That's because of what they're installing lately. That's not long-term.
But that actually it is part of their long-term contract to support those servers, and we do have
The warranty?
well, there's a maintenance part of the contract that we pay, and we get certain number of hours each month for those kinds of issues. And they're set up that if a server goes down, they get an automatic notification. There is a 24/7 email and phone number that we can reach out to them. But what they're not set up to do, and our contract isn't set up to do, is to learn how to run reports out of ProPhoenix and run ad hoc reports when they come out. Or again, Chief Snow, if I'm going the wrong direction or missing some big things, or if there's issues with body cams or dash cams or the storage of the information.
And
Or a PC doesn't boot up, or the Excel doesn't start, or any of those type of things.
and where this became particularly problematic, I guess, is back in 2019 when our communications supervisor left, and she was a communications supervisor, but she also dealt almost exclusively with the ProPhoenix stuff. She troubleshot a lot of this IT stuff. She wasn't an IT person per se, but she was very comfortable working with it. And then the plan back then, if you remember, was to replace her with a designated IT position. When we went to this managed services, we lost that position and kind of got the same service everybody else got. So we were struggling to replace her, which we thought we were doing, and we really weren't.
Trustee Hudson.
So I think this is in front of the board tonight because if I can remember correctly, our fire chief is spending 12 to 15 hours a week on IT-related issues. So, and I mean, if my memory is incorrect, somebody please chime in. But if we're going to delay this until next year, we have to be comfortable that our fire chief is also going to be his own IT person. And I don't know how much time you're spending on IT-related issues out of your work week either, but.
Yeah, between the captain and one of our lieutenants, it would be at least that.
I think what we're talking about is we know we can't fund a full-time position this year. And even if let's say we'd say yes, it would take a while to find that person. So it wouldn't be an immediate fill. But what we're looking at the interim from Administrator Krecklow is to see if we can contract somebody else to do that infill, to be that on-call person, from whether it's coming from the current contract we have in the company that we're currently using for setting up our servers, or if it's somebody that's more along a private contractor. But we should look for that as well to fill the gap for this year. And next year, the onus is on us to find the monies to fund the position itself.
And do we think we can find a person like that? I know you do, Terry.
I think that there are people out there who do that. They're not always easy to find, but there are folks who, just run a single or one or two person shop that are fairly low cost, low overhead, and, can handle that frontline type of stuff.
Thank you.
Trustee Kaminsky.
And I might be able to even provide you a name or two of people that we've used in the past. who are small like that, because I was just going to say, how cost effective would it really be to you? I don't think so. And at some point, I'd like to see an analysis of what we're paying and what we're getting on that too, as that contract kind of winds down.
Yeah, it'll
You get
trade
a lot
off.
sometimes, I know we needed them for the transition for sure, but moving forward, if we could find somebody that can get up and running on Pro Phoenix really quickly and could be in here even a day or two a week, day and a half a week, you say, what are your problems? Hold them, here I come, or call them up. But I think that's something we have to move on now. That's people's time shouldn't be spent doing that when you're
So
supposed
to
to be.
move on now would be to find the infill person?
Find an infill person
Okay.
and pay for them this year.
Okay.
Because that shouldn't be as costly as,
As a full-time
obviously,
person?
as a full-time person.
I agree.
Okay, anybody have anything else to add? Chief Delane, you're on the line. Anything to add?
I think Chief Snow has it exactly correct. A lot of the people in the upper positions are spending a lot of time on IT work, and it's taking away from things that we could otherwise be doing. But as Chief Snow also said, at this time it's important to take care of our people too.
Board? Trustee Myers?
I think we should do both, just like Terry said. So I don't know how you want to make the motion in regard to trying to find some particular firm or person who could fill this in with a.
You could make a motion to direct staff to find somebody until we look at the budget and try to fund a position within 2024.
Thank you. I'll use that same wordage, please.
Getting good at this. Almost as good as Trustee Baum. That is your motion?
Yes, sir.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Do we have a second? Second who? Trustee Baum? Trustee Baum, do you have your hand up? Oh, to say you are the second. I see. All right, so we have a motion on the floor, and the motion is to direct staff or village administrator to find somebody that we can contract with to handle our day-to-day IT issues and present the board with what that cost is, and where the funding would come from for that. And then it is up to this village board to then look for funding of a full-time position for budget year 2024. And that is how the second understands it. Okay. Discussion. Trustee Jan Miller.
Just so I'm clear, so the person that we're looking for this year is more of a part-time person?
That's
Yep,
correct.
like a
An
half
on-call,
person.
let's say.
On call.
Yeah,
right.
as needed.
As needed. I agree.
Okay, further discussion? We're just directing staff. We don't have any monies to it right now, so there's no need for roll call. Any other discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief. Next item is item H, Fire Chief Compensation. Village Administrator.
Thank you. As you may recall, last fall, we went through the process of increasing the pay for the 3 battalion chiefs in the fire department. After looking at other comparable communities and taking a look at other salaries within the fire department. It was really an oversight on my part. We should have at that point been also included the fire chief because after the battalion chiefs were increased, they were actually increased to a slightly higher salary than the fire chief was making. So I'm recommending that we correct that this evening. And we did take a look. I listed in the memo that we had written about 8 different communities. There's not they weren't selected because necessarily their comparability to Germantown. It was simply the data that we had available when we put the memo together. But I think it gives a good idea of what fire chief salaries are going for these days. So my recommendation to the board is that we increase the fire chief's salary from $93,820 to $104,928, which would be the mid-range of the pay range for the fire chief. He has been in his current role for going on 5 years now. And he's been in the fire department for 24 years, and during much of that time was, well, not fire chief, the deputy chief, or playing management roles within the department. So that's my recommendation for putting him at the midpoint.
What's the difference?
Motion to approve 104,928.
What is it?
The difference is $11,108.
Second.
That's coming from?
This is, I believe at this amount, the fire department can absorb within their budget.
Okay, just so everybody knows. Motion made, who is the second? Trustee Hudson. Discussion on the motion to approve. Oh, we're getting quiet.
Getting late.
Come on, Jan, I know you got something.
Well deserved. Let's do it.
Thank you. It's hard to disagree with anything that the village administrator said. John has been a longstanding employee within the village. He's been through and seen a lot. He has a lot of history and a lot of knowledge that he can share with his department and help this village. So anything we can do to help John, I am in support of. And if this helps him to stay where he is and continue to do the good work he does every day, I think it's money well spent. Further discussion? Further discussion? We do roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers.
Aye.
Trustee Hudson.
Aye.
Trustee Baum. Trustee Kaminsky.
Aye.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Jan Miller.
Aye.
Trustee Nyrather.
Aye.
And President Walter.
Aye. Motion passes. Next item is item I, policy discussion concerning use of virtual appearances for meetings.
Sure. So that's me. As you'll recall, a couple meetings ago, we talked about the fact that there was plans that we're going to update our code as it relates to kind of the operations of the board, appearances, that kind of stuff. One of the key components to that is, as all of you know, during COVID, we adopted the WebEx exclusively initially, and then went to what we now have, which is kind of the hybrid model where we allow anybody to appear by WebEx to participate in meetings. In addition, we are live streaming. Just looked earlier this evening, we had about 7 people on WebEx. One of them was Steve. Another one we've now learned is John Delane. So there were about 5 people that I didn't recognize on WebEx. There were 6 people that were live streaming the meeting on YouTube. I think one of those was Director Retzloff, because he, after we kind of concluded the discussion on ATVs, texted to basically say, yeah, you're right. So hi, Jeff, thanks for that information. So there's about 5 people on the live stream as well. So the question is for this evening, whether or not we want to continue to utilize the WebEx approach on a full-time basis, meaning that we would just keep it going the same way that we do, where any member of the public could participate via that method, or if we want to get rid of it altogether. Or if we want to make it available only to certain individuals. For example, we had Leah from Baker Tilly, who was in Madison, came in, didn't say anything, but she was online earlier as well. So those types of things, staff members that maybe for some reason weren't able to be here, or board members, we could limit it in certain methods. Certainly, my recommendation in any event, no matter what happens with the virtual component, we would continue to live stream to YouTube. And obviously when Channel 25 is fixed, we would continue to do that as well. So we're really looking at just the kind of virtual component and what we think we want to do with that moving forward. So
Motion to approve what we've been doing and have it open to anybody.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. Trustee Kaminsky.
What are other communities doing? Have we looked into that at all? Because I know this is the remaining hybrid from COVID now.
yeah, I will tell you that it's kind of a weird mix. That you have some communities that have done away with it completely. You have some communities, Mequon, for example, is one of the communities that uses it only when board members themselves are not able to attend, or if they had some consult that was coming a long distance, they would allow them to do it. But otherwise, they don't do a virtual component as part of that. There are a number of communities, a lot of them in Dane County, I guess, not surprisingly, that continue to do the full hybrid approach and continue to do that. The last I checked, which was a month and a half ago or so, there were actually a couple communities that were still doing fully virtual. So it's kind of the full spectrum. I think that it's really at the end of the day what the board is comfortable with and the technology. And I think the technology here has proved that it's maybe not as ideal as certainly I envisioned it when we adopted it, but it works better than some of the other systems that I've seen. So it's certainly capable from a technology standpoint. It's whether or not we want to continue to allow it.
Trustee Rick Miller.
Yeah, I do want to continue it. What I would say though is we should probably review whether WebEx is the best platform to do this. Zoom is also very, widely used, but Teams is becoming the wider used item and it's already paid for in our Microsoft 365. So we really don't need a secondary type of thing anymore. We could put the same thing out with something that's already included in our subscription. So I would ask staff to review that as we move forward with this.
There's also Google Meetings that are also not, you can use as part of the.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bunch of different platforms and that's why I'm saying WebEx may not be the best. Maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, and certainly when we had this discussion, in fact, I think it was Trustee Miller, the other Miller, who had asked the question at that meeting just about kind of the whole interrelation between those. And certainly that's one of the things we do intend to do as well, is to look at, which platform is really going to give us the right mix of, what we need to make this work. And maybe that's still WebEx, maybe it's, Zoom. We talked, for example, Zoom is much easier to do the dual stream to Zoom and YouTube than WebEx, which is a couple steps, that kind of thing. So I do think that that'll be part of the discussion as well.
Trustee Jan Miller.
I agree that we need to stream for the public. So many people, there are people through COVID that have that are still sick or, getting the backlash. So it's very sad, but it is 2023 and there's technology out there. And I agree with Trustee Rick Miller, that we have a choice, and it's been absolute torture with some of this WebEx stuff and keeping it going. And I was at the county boardroom, and they do have a brand new spanking system, and they have live stream all the time. Jackson has a brand new building that they put together for their fire, police, and village hall, and they have the instruments in. They just have to have somebody come in and put it in.
Hopefully it's not Spectrum.
No, I don't think so. But I sent him a note, do not go Spectrum. So I believe that we need to do the evaluation. Maybe we can come up with some extra money to fund the police salary increases.
Hmm.
Thank you.
Interesting. Further discussion? I think with technology as it is today, any way that people can access these meetings, you should be allowed to access it, whether it be virtually or streaming or Channel 25, and look for any way, always to present the information. I think it's also helpful when trustees or board members might be traveling and be out and still want to participate in a committee meeting or in a village board meeting, that they're able to do so by calling in and having a virtual presence. I think that's helpful, and it doesn't limit the representation of the residents to that committee or to that village board meeting for that particular night. And at the same time, it allows those that have all different technologies available to them or only limited technologies to them to see the meeting one way or another. So as we pursue fixing the issues that we have with Channel 25, we should continue to post and allow access to this meeting in any way possible. So I would agree with the motion. Further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. Next three items are motions to go into closed session, J, K, and L. And J reads Resolution 06-2023, disallowing discount ramps claim. The village board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin statutes 19.85 subsection 1, subparagraph G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or it is not likely to become involved, and may reconvene in the open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. Village attorney.
So on the first one, I'm not sure that we need to go in closed session. We noticed it in case you wanted to. This is a tax assessment claim alleging that their assessment is too high. We're presently in litigation. We're awaiting a decision from the court actually on that litigation that will hopefully come sometime in May, we're thinking.
Okay.
This is just for the current year assessment. Recommendation would be to deny, just as we did the last one. If there's no need to discuss strategy or what we would do, we could just make a motion to approve the resolution denying the claim and go from there.
I'll make a motion.
To approve the resolution denying the claim.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion on the motion to approve. Trustee Jan Miller.
Right.
That I don't remember off the top of my head, sorry.
It's less.
It is less.
They say they should pay less.
I want to say that the amount in dispute is about $10 million is what my recollection was.
$10 million less?
Of total value, not assessed.
Valuation.
Yeah. So you'd multiply that out by the mill rate to get what they're looking for. But obviously part of their claim is based a little bit on the dark store theory. Not that this is a retail store, but it was kind of the same concept that they were pushing. And in light of the recent Supreme Court case, I think that even if they even if they win their motion and the case continues, I think they'll have a hard time once they get to trial, establishing the value that they're looking for.
Village administrator feels it's around 170,000.
Thank you.
Further discussion? No further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries. That then takes us to K and L, which are motions for closed session. K reads Resolution 05-2023, disallowance of claim for Rochelle Malyug. The village board may enter into closed session per Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85, subsection 1, subparagraph G, for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the governmental body who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the body with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved, and then may reconvene in the open session to take such action as it deems appropriate. And new business item L, which is the acquisition of Gross Neck property, which is located at North 116, West 15843 Main Street, and West 157, North 11593 Fond du Lac Avenue. The village board may enter a closed session per Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85, subsection 1, subparagraph E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating when competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, and then re-enter open session to take such action as it deems appropriate.
Motion to go into closed session for K and L.
Including whom?
I don't go through that. Whatever you want.
Item K, the administrator, the attorney, and the police chief. And for item L, the administrator, village attorney. Do we need public works director?
No, I wouldn't think we would need Larry for this. Larry, do you think you need to be here for this? No.
Okay. All right, that is the motion, and we had a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion made and second. Any discussion on the motion to go into closed session? No discussion? All those, roll call vote, please.
Trustee Myers,
Yes.
Trustee Rick Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Baum, Trustee Hudson, Trustee Kaminsky, Trustee Jan Miller,
Aye.
Trustee Nyrather, and President Walter.
Aye. Before we go into closed session and adjourn to go into closed session, the next regular village board meeting will be on Monday, May 1st at 7 p.m. here at the Village Hall Boardroom. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you all for watching, and have a good night. Couple minutes to close down things before we go into closed session, so please turn off your microphones.